The production of this video was made possible by donors to the Orchestration Online Patreon initiative. Please consider adding your support to the creation of free educational internet resources by visiting our Patreon page linked below.
Hey there, this is your orchestration tutor Thomas Goss, with a video guide to entering my annual orchestration challenges. Even if you've entered these challenges in previous years, I hope you'll take a look at this video because some guidelines and procedures may have changed or evolved since then. This video represents a general guide. Each annual announcement video on the channel, and relevant events posting on the Orchestration Online website and on Patreon, will have specific guidelines with which to get your score ready for the evaluation process for that year. But there are some universal features to every challenge that would be helpful to cover in more detail than just a list of do's and don'ts. So let's take a look at those now. The first thing I want to stress is that this is a challenge, not a contest or a competition or a lottery. I challenge everyone to orchestrate a given sample of music, including myself. What we all gain is the opportunity to grow, to learn from our mistakes, to develop into more experienced artists, and to renew our ongoing conversation with each other about the craft of orchestration. I hold these challenges once a year, almost always at the same time, starting with my birthday on the 15th of July. On that date, I announce the piece of music that we'll all orchestrate, along with specific guidelines for that year. Everyone who decides to enter the challenge, and I hope that includes you, will have 6 weeks to complete their entry and send it to me. Then on midnight of August the 19th, Pacific Daylight Time, the challenge closes. Make sure you've sent me your entry by then, because I have to stay firm to that deadline. What does it cost? For most people who enter, absolutely nothing except for time and involvement. All that I ask is that you subscribe to the orchestrationonline.com website newsletter, which is free to join. This newsletter will keep you up to date on video releases, blog posts, orchestration tips, and any new courses that I may offer from time to time. Website subscribers are welcome to orchestrate the first section of each year's entry, averaging around half a minute to a minute of music. This is usually quite enough for most of our participants, and it's great to see just how much individuality and creativity that my website subscribers pour into reimagining those same opening bars. I can't recall ever getting the exact same orchestration from two different people. That's all part of the excitement for me, and what keeps it fresh year after year. If a couple dozen bars isn't enough, then you might want to consider entering as a Patreon supporter. The different levels of support built into the Orchestration Online Patreon page open up more bars to my participants, from the next section of music all the way to the end of the piece. If you just want to support for a limited time in order to submit a longer excerpt, that's totally fine. I only request a full 2 months of support from you at the level for your entry. During this period of support, I fully encourage you to take advantage of all the benefits at your level. Discounted or free books and courses, access to Patreon-exclusive content like tips, lectures, and many of the other posts made just for the people who help me keep this channel running. I get hundreds of entries, and I give them all the special attention they require. Some website subscribers will go ahead and orchestrate the entire piece just for fun or for personal improvement, and that's fine so long as people understand that I'll only have time to evaluate the given passages in each category. All I can say, though, is that if you're going to put a huge amount of effort into your entry, it might be worth your time to support the channel for a couple of months and get feedback from me on everything you scored. Once the challenge is closed, I'll release my own orchestration of the piece, along with a detailed series of lectures discussing the challenges I faced and the decisions I made in orchestrating each section. Then I'll start releasing my evaluations of your entries. Website subscriber entries will each run about 10 to 20 minutes long, collected together into compilation videos in the order I received them. Patreon entry videos can run quite a bit longer, with a separate video for each participant, sometimes running over an hour long if I have a lot to discuss about the score. All these videos will be released publicly on the channel over the course of a couple of months. It'll take me some time to get through everyone's entries, especially if I keep getting as many scores as in recent years. People ask me what makes these challenges worthwhile for me. One part of it is to look at so many different interpretations of the same music. But a really big part of it is to see everyone interact. The best way to thank me for running these challenges and evaluating your scores is to give each other positive, constructive feedback in the comments under each video. Even if it's just to tell a fellow participant how much you liked their orchestration. You don't have to be an expert to enjoy someone's efforts and let them know. The more conversation I see under these videos, the happier I feel about doing these challenges. Okay, so you've seen the latest announcements, you've decided to participate, so what do you do next? If you're intending to enter as a website subscriber, simply click on over to the Orchestration Online website events page linked in the info for this video. There, you'll find this year's guidelines, links to scores and recordings of the excerpt to orchestrate, and full details for preparing your score and sending it to me once you're ready. I'll go over some of those guidelines in a minute, but the easiest way to get started is to open the linked resources at the bottom of the page. I provided templates for the original piano score excerpt, and for the same excerpt embedded into a blank orchestral page, formatted to the correct screen dimensions for my evaluation videos. From there, you can let your imagination and sense of craft run free, and transform the original notes across the orchestral landscape. If you're a Patreon supporter, then go to the Patreon page feed, where you'll get more or less the same information, but with templates for the full piano score, on its own, and embedded into a blank orchestral page. Notice that this challenge has set rehearsal marks that delineate sections of music relevant to each level of Patreon support. Please don't change them, that just makes things confusing later. But before you go charging directly into orchestrating your score, please check out all the recommended information for each challenge, and especially my video 12 Common Scoring Errors, because we sure don't want to go over all those mistakes again in your entry. Even if you're an experienced orchestrator, that video might serve as a kind of checklist to help you proof your entry before you send it in. Some errors show up all too often in this kind of challenge, like copy-pasting the original piano score onto the harp part, or scoring really important parts for flute in its lowest register against a very loud orchestral texture. I think the worst possible mistake is the last one, which is to ignore the context of how a work is performed, and how that expresses the meaning of the music you intend to orchestrate. Even if your plan is to extravagantly adapt the work far beyond the original notes of the piano score, the spirit of the music's original conception should still play some kind of role, in opposition if nothing else. Now let's quickly go over the guidelines and preferences. Most participants over the past few years have been great about following these, but occasionally they can be unclear to orchestrators who are just starting out. These guidelines may change from year to year, so make sure you check the events page for the exact information. Usually I put the limit on a professional-sized orchestra: triple winds, 4 horns, 3 trumpets and 3 trombones, 1 tuba, 1 dedicated timpanist, 3 percussionists, celesta, harp, and strings. You don't have to use all those instruments in your score, that's just the maximum allowable. Then we have a few restrictions, the most important one being to not turn your entry into a long piece that's mainly for harp or celesta, where you just dump the piano part onto one of those instruments and added a little bit of strings or winds here and there. That's not orchestration. Also, Be aware that harp and celesta are very delicate instruments that cannot compete in loud scoring. I always get orchestration challenge entries in which the harp is doing something important, but no one can hear it because the rest of the orchestra is too damn loud. Please save me the time of telling you not to do that in the evaluation stage. Another restriction is to not go hog wild with your auxiliaries, in which every wind or brass player is playing some very rare or unusual version of the standard model. It's better to mainly have standard instruments, but to add any unusual instruments as special guests or in support. With triple winds, one player from each family doubling on an auxiliary is usually the best approach. Additionally, I want you to double up or triple up your wind and brass staves. When you send me an entry with a separate staff for each wind and brass instrument, I end up with a hugely vertical score where the staves are so tiny that I can't evaluate them on the screen. Using the same rehearsal marks as the template I already talked about. This is a good guideline to cover. You don't have to tie yourself down to the exact pitches in each register of the piano score. Feel free to change registers, expand or contract the music, do whatever you need to make the music more of an orchestral work. Finally, and this is perhaps the most important of all, since I'm going to be evaluating your work on a screen, recording that evaluation as a video that you and other orchestrators will watch, then it's easiest to read your entry if it's set to screen dimensions. Just like I mentioned before, very small staff sizes aren't going to work, so keep things readable as much as possible. Now for some preferences. This is what I want from you, after looking through hundreds of scores over the past decade. Name the files you send to me like this: the year of the Orchestration Challenge, the words, Orchestration Challenge, and then your name. I don't need the name of the original composer or the piece, because I know that, and you know that already. Or which draft this is, or what day you finished it, unless I ask you for a new draft. Your name should be the one you want me to use in the video, in case you have a preferred nickname or alias or whatever. Next, use really normal, ordinary concert scoring approaches, like normal-sized time signatures instead of giant numbers, and the bar number at the start of each system, not boxed for every bar. Before you send me your score, hit the transpose button in your notation application, because I prefer to read it that way. If you can't do that, or for some reason you absolutely have to send me a score in concert pitch, please add the word "score in C" in the upper left margin of the first page. If you have been scoring in C, but then you transpose the score to send to me, make sure you correct all the clefs, like treble clef for horns and bass clarinet if you were using bass clef, or alto clef for your violas if you were using treble clef, and so on. Finally, I prefer separate single lines for unpitched percussion, like bass drum, cymbal, or snare drum. That's so much easier for me to evaluate, rather than multiple instruments sharing a 5-line staff. But of course, for pitched percussion, woodblocks, multiple tom-toms, and such, definitely use a 5-line staff. So you've watched all the videos, read all the guidelines and preferences, orchestrated your entry, and now you're ready to send it to me. What do? Go back to the events page on the website, or the Orchestration Challenge announcement post if you're on Patreon, and click on the linked text to use the official entry form. You'll get a pretty minimalistic request for your name, location, email address, confirmation that you've subscribed to the website or that you're supporting on Patreon, followed by clarification of which support level, and permission to archive your score on the channel. Then there's a button you can click to help you choose the files to send me from your computer. Always zip these files. If you're a Sibelius user, then just send me your .sib file. If you're using another application like Dorico, send me a PDF of your score. Also, please send me a mock-up of your score exported to an MP3 file. Not that I need it in order to evaluate what's in your score necessarily, but sometimes it helps me to hear what you heard when you were orchestrating your entry if there's anything that seems unclear, And also, those mock-ups really help most viewers to understand your entry better when they watch the evaluation videos. Like the entry form says, if you're using Note Performer with your Sibelius files, then you don't need to send me a mock-up. I'll just generate that here. Did I mention this before? I'll mention it again. It's really important to zip your files before you upload them. That's been the biggest problem in the past for participants using the entry form. But if there are any problems at all, there's a contact email at the bottom of the form so you can get in touch with me directly. Now that you know all the details, you simply have no excuse but to check out this year's information and start working on your entry. The sooner the better. I'm really looking forward to see what you'll come up with.